This is Rob Morse of the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. I'm reminding you that this podcast is one of the many good ones on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, the slayer of non-threats, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. I want to take a minute to talk about our good friends at Kooks Holsters. When I first got started in concealed carry, I really didn't know what I was doing. I picked out one of those cheap prophylactic holsters that collapse when you draw the gun out. Yeah, I know, I was one of those guys. But then I started learning more. I took some classes, I read books, I watched videos, and I found out about the advantage of Kydex. And that's how I discovered Kooks Holsters. What makes Kooks Holsters special? Well, they're an American success story for one thing. Born in the founder's basement, Kooks Holsters grew so much that the owner left his job, his full-time job, to make holsters full-time, and then expanded and hired people because he had to have help to fill orders and meet demand. They even sell printed Kydex to many of the other holster makers, and their subsidiary business, Kooks Molds, actually makes the molds that many of those other holster makers use to make their products. Custom molded to fit your firearm, Kooks Holsters are available for carry, for range work, for competition. I use them every day. Check them out at kooksholsters.com. Use the promo code ARMEDPODCAST and save 15% off your order at kooksholsters.com. Our special guest today is Josh Bresett from Halfmoon, New York. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Halfmoon.
Sure. So I work for a financial institution in the Albany area where I do like financial analysis and I'm a licensed health insurance professional, and we do, group health insurance, sales, disability, all those kinds of fun and exciting things.
Right. So are you a native of New York?
I am, yeah, born and raised. My parents are both from, way upstate New York, practically Canada. They moved down, closer to the central part of New York, the Capital District. And then I've moved, further south to, actually around Albany.
Okay. So as some might say, you're born and raised, spent your whole life behind enemy lines, so to speak, when it comes to guns. Where did the interest in guns come from?
Yeah, it's an interesting place in New York. They're always coming up with something. My father and most of his family are very avid outdoorsmen and sportsmen. He is a pretty good bullseye shooter for a long time. When my brother and I, my brother's a little older than me. When my brother and I got interested in bullseye, or NRA precision now, but we went with him and we competed. And that's how I kind of got into shooting IDPA, was that we were at a club that had IDPA there, and we both saw a flyer and said, "Hey, we're not members here, but can we come check this out?" And they said, "Yeah, absolutely." So I grew up around guns all the time. When I was a kid, I went to Boy Scout camp, had a good time. I ended up working there as I got a little older. So my summers were mostly spent on the rifle, shotgun, and archery fields at a Boy Scout camp, where I eventually became the archery director and then the field sports director for a few years. So I became, at 21 years old, I was an NRA certified pistol, rifle, muzzleloading, all those kinds of things, and ran, youth through a shooting sports program in upstate New York, right in the foothills of the Adirondacks. It was called Camp Wakpamani, still is called that. It's a wonderful place. I have a lot of good memories there, but definitely, growing up, in the summers, working in the range and teaching people that weren't much younger than me how to shoot definitely solidified me, even if my dad hadn't been a big influence.
Nice. So you talked about seeing the flyer at the club, and that being your introduction to IDPA. Do you remember the first local match there at the club?
Oh, geez. Yeah, so it was only a handful of people, and I remember the guy that kind of introduced us into the whole thing, and like did the safety orientation with my dad and I at the same time. He'd go out with a spray paint can and mark some places for barrels, and we'd go out the next day and move the barrels around and shoot. I remember not doing very well, even though I don't remember what the stages and things were. Sarah Spa is a unique place. At least I think it's unique in that we do IDPA every week. We have Tuesdays and Thursday practice kind of things where we actually set up, 4 kind of, not sanctioned match level stages. Sometimes we do, but, just kind of 4 stages for people to kind of come in and practice. So, in any one week, you can shoot 8 stages. So that was really my first introduction to it. And that was in an indoor, in an indoor range. That's how we can do it so often. And the only thing we really had was, we had a couple, 2x4 swinger things and, target stands on wheels, and we just rolled them out there. And then indoor archery was a bigger thing at one point at the club. So we had these big archery bail things that were all tied together, and we'd wheel those around for walls. And then, there'd only be 5 or 6 of us, and we'd go shoot and just burn through a ton of rounds. And that was only on Thursday nights then.
Nice. So you talked about shooting indoors and it allowing you to shoot year round. What's the shooting season like otherwise in upstate New York?
So some people say that it never stops, but it's definitely, true. I mean, most clubs, we kind of stop from December through February, and it's just, if you don't, you're running around in maybe knee deep in snow, especially ice. Ice is kind of treacherous. Yeah. Some clubs will close down in the winter or close down certain ranges, not just, like IDPA, but just they'll close their ranges down in general because they don't want bullets hitting the ground and then skipping over the berm. So they've made modifications to it and things. But winter definitely slows shooting down in upstate New York. So there is kind of a season, and it's about when the mud stops, which this year with our rain has not happened yet. But generally, when the mud stops, we shoot from about April to November.
All right. Well, how long after that first club match experience, how long was it before you decided, hey, this is really cool, I want to get serious about this, and really tried to get better? It's very different from the kinds of things you were teaching at the Boy Scout camps. What was that transition like or how long did it take before you decided, I want to be really good at this?
It's funny. So I was hooked immediately, and it's because I thought maybe I would do well, and I didn't. I'm a pretty good shot. I have been, shot since I was a kid. And, we spent a lot of time shooting rimfire rifles and shotgun shooting. I was pretty good with a bow. I thought, this is going to be easy. And when it wasn't, hook, line, and sinker, it was just, I absolutely I have to get better at this. I can't believe, it was fun, but at the same time, it was this is the biggest challenge, that I've ever had in shooting sports. And, I'm ready to take it on. So it was, I kind of, so right away, like we were still shooting. I say we, my dad and I loved shooting with him. He's a great guy, a great mentor and everything. So when we would go, we were still shooting bullseye too, and it was tough. So the way the bullseye league works in the Adirondacks, I think there's a few different ones, but the one that most of the clubs around where my club is take place in, it's a winter league, even though there's other ones that go and they do other shooting seasons and stuff. But the main league that we were a part of is a winter league, and you shoot every Monday night for I think there was I don't remember how many clubs there are now, but you shoot every Monday night, and you shoot shoot for a couple weeks. So it was hard to do that and then do this other thing. So when I first started shooting IDPA, I wasn't really going every week. It was like a couple times a month or maybe once a month while I was doing this bullseye thing. And then summer came and then I would go to IDPA more, and then there were more, local matches and things. Really some of the guys at the club looked at me and said, "Hey, we're going to this match. It's the New England Regionals at, Harvard Sportsman's Club in, near Harvard, Massachusetts. You should come with us." And I think that was the second year that I was shooting so I went out there and I looked and I said, well, all right, let's give it a try. And that was my first, sanctioned match. And some of the stages went pretty well. Some were a complete disaster. But they had things there that we had never seen before at our club. Like I think the one mover that we had was a single drop turn. Right. We had a couple of things that was swing from the ceiling or whatever in the indoor range. And, there were some other things the club had been a bigger IDPA club maybe 10 years before this or whatever, where there was maybe 2001, 2002, 2003. I wasn't around, but they had a sanctioned match then. So a lot of these things were left over, but a lot of those guys had kind of disappeared, and the club wasn't really getting any bigger as far as IDPA shooters. So we didn't have all these things like that, these clamshell things, max traps and swingers and just all this stuff. And, movers that shot down tracks. And we're just looking at it and going, what did we get ourselves into? We sucked as a group. It was tough. I think I finished sixth marksman, which, for a tier 4 match, my first time out that, I was like, well, that's respectable. I got a little medallion or something. And, some other people from my club had done better. And I really, we all came back and said, all right, if we're going to go out and keep doing this, we need more stuff. And that's kind of how we've grown from there. We just, we had some money, we bought some stuff, we put on better matches, we made more money, we got more people involved, we bought more stuff. And it's not just about the stuff, but it really helped. And it really, eventually our local matches turned into people looking at us and saying, why aren't you doing a sanctioned match kind of thing? So, it was all kind of good feedback, and, going out and just getting my butt kicked really kind of solidified, all right, I need to do more about this. And that's when I really got serious.
Now, you are now the co-MD of the Battle of Saratoga. Talk about how that came about. How did you get so involved that they said, hey, Josh, we need an MD, and you're the right guy for it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, kind of like anything, you can either choose to be involved at a tertiary level, kind of on the outside, and just show up, whatever. Like we were talking about shooting sports, show up, pay your money, shoot the match, go home. That's not really, who I am. That's not, I keep referencing my father. That's not who he is. He's a, show up early, set up the chairs, stay late, take them down kind of guy. So that's, what I did. I got involved. Here's what happened. So it was one of those things where it's we just encourage everybody to kind of become a safety officer if they've been around for a while. It just makes life a lot easier. And, Debbie Singer from downstate New York, she is not a member of our club, but she's very active. She was the actual match director for the Battle of Saratoga last year, whereas this year, her and I and one other guy, we are co-match directors at the same time. It's worked really well. A lot of places don't really do that, but we work pretty well together as a team. She's the safety officer instructor for our region. So we just say, hey, Debbie, will you come up? And, we have another 5 or 6 people, and the people that come to the club and that are members and that shoot at IDPA and that stay, they really want to be involved. So I got involved that way as a safety officer. And then, so what happened was one time we had done, so the other guy that I mentioned, his name is Jordan Mosier. He's the current club president. He was the guy that was going out spray painting spots on the ground for the barrels. stopped putting the stages together because he didn't really have time. His business was changing and all of these things. So, he had other people. We'd just grab some stages and we'd go and we'd set them up. Well, it got to the point where it was kind of difficult to do that because, 6 different people would come up with 6 different ideas that used the same equipment. And this was in our, just started buying stuff stage. So we had one swinger or we had one double drop turn, or we only had a certain number of resources. So just one time after doing it, I was like, you know what? And the other thing too is we have some kind of weird shaped like pits and things. And then with the indoor range, it's a regular classic backstop. Rounds can only go forward. So when all these people had different ideas, it kind of became difficult to set that match up the morning of without a greater plan in place. So one time I said, I've got some good ideas. Like I used to come to the Tuesday and Thursday things and go, hey, I've been thinking about this idea. I want to set it up and here's a cool stage. So I just said, here, I'll just come up with 6 stages. And as I started doing that, they got a little more advanced in things. I think some of the guys that helped me, some of the people, not just guys, sorry, that helped me set that up would probably look at me and go, yeah, a little advanced, Josh, you think so? But it's kind of turned into, all of our sanctioned, so both the sanctioned match last year and this year and all of our local matches, I do all the stages. And that's kind of the thing that kind of drew me into, being the match director, was being involved, a co-match director. I'm a board member of our local club. I'm the vice president. But there's another person that is the IDPA director, and he's the other guy that I mentioned. That's the co-match director. So him and I work pretty well together doing those things. But I'm the guy that comes up with the stages, and that's kind of how I got involved in, being a safety officer and all these things. Just, one of those people that shows up, sets up, has ideas and things that you just kind of get drafted into that kind of stuff.
Right. All right. Well, getting back to your own shooting experience.
Sure.
Before you, or maybe not counting your own matches, or maybe one of your own, do you have a memory of, you've been doing this, since 2012? Have you got
that sounds
right. Have you got a memory as, from a match that you've been to, something fun or strange or bizarre that you experienced as a shooter?
Living in New York, one of the things that was always nice, it was really close to us, and it's a shame that, Smith & Wesson has sold their building off to a recycler next door. But in Springfield, Massachusetts, the Smith & Wesson, shooting center was the place where the indoor nationals for IDPA was held, and being very close to it, 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive. I went to that match quite a few times. I think maybe 3 or 4, something like that. And that was always like, wow, this is something else. Like, it's all indoors. You use a flashlight a ton. So, and a lot of the big names in the sport would come and, I don't think I was ever there on a day where I could see them, but, just knowing that, these guys are going to shoot this and all these things, or seeing them, like videos of them shooting the one from last year or whatever, was always cool, because I could look and say, this is what I did. So there was this stage, and I think colloquially it's referred to as the ATM stage, and it was in the very first big public bay in there. And all day I was hearing about, oh man, there's this cascade target, which if you don't, I'm sure but if other people don't know, it's where one target falls and it pulls the other target down, and it pulls a third target down. And you started, turned 90 degrees away from the cascade target, and there was a little like file cabinet looking thing that was built in like an ATM, and you pushed an aluminum card in, like you were pushing your ATM card in, right. And that knocked the weight off inside, that pulled something that activated the cascade target. I heard people, at this point I'd known other people in the sport and met them and shot with them. They shot at our club and all these things. So some of them were working the match, and some of them were just on other squads. And, the Smith & Wesson shooting center wasn't very big, so you run into other people. So everybody's telling me, just skip the first target. Some people are missing it completely. It was really, I don't remember. It seems a lot further now in my head than it was. I don't really remember exactly how far away it was. It might have been like 15 yards. And they were just going, just just skip the first one, try to get the last two. Some people are missing it completely. And I told everybody in my squad all day, it's like, nope, at this point I was shooting pretty fast, maybe not so accurate sometimes, but pretty fast. I'm going to hit them all. I'm going to hit them all. I'm going to hit them all. So I get up there, and having B as my first letter of my last name means I tend to always shoot some stage first or whatever. I wasn't first on this one because we're in the day, but I was up pretty early in it, and I just remember, all right, and I told myself, don't push the card as soon as the buzzer goes off. Give yourself just a little hair beat, so you don't panic and just draw and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear the beep go off, and there's a little delay, and I push the card in, and I turn and I draw, and I fired 7 rounds. Pop, 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 pop. And then you take off and you do a whole other thing, and there was more to the stage. So then, with a cascade target, the targets were laying down. These fell forward, so they're laying down. So you go around after unloaded show clear and come up, and they pull up the first one, and I go, I got 2 on that one, and they pull up the second one, and I go, I got 2 on that one. I don't remember where they were. It's just I'd hit it, and then they pull up the first one, and I got 1 on that one. And actually, no, it was 2, 3, and then 1. So one of my shots I'd pushed from the first one to the second target or whatever. But 7 shots, I hit it 6 times of the 3 targets, even though I only hit 1 once. But just remember that feeling of I said I was going to do it, and there, like, this is the thing that everybody went, oh my God, this is so hard, and I did pretty well on it.
What division are you competing in currently? What do you like to shoot now?
Right now, I'm shooting carry optics. For a long time, I shot SSP and ESP. But the allure of shooting the red dot was interesting. And I have a SIG X5 and an X carry as a backup with the Romeo 1 red dots. Radial tactical holsters, the whole 9 yards, really great gear, which always helps. But, a lot of people at my club, shoot SIGs and things. So it's kind of interesting. I stayed away from them for the longest time. But not for any reason other than just everybody around me was shooting something from them. But the red dot definitely is a whole different game, and I shoot it in USPSA as well, which is good. I can kind of take the same gun and do both. But for the longest time, I shot SSP and ESP.
Okay. If you couldn't shoot any of those 3, SSP, ESP, carry optics, is there a division that you would like to try or that interests you?
Yeah, I have a gun for every IDPA division. I'm a PCC Master. Revolver is a ton of fun. You just have to convince yourself that you're never going to be in the top of the overall results unless, your last name is Norris or Mikulik. So you just kind of take for what it is. CCP and CDP are fun as well. But I definitely, and then PCC, some people kind of look at you funny when you bring a rifle out to a pistol match. I think it's fun. Shooting anything is fun. I would definitely pull out the wheel gun and do some more of that if I couldn't do anything else.
Nice. All right, so we're going to play a little pick your poison. I'm going to give you a couple of options, and you have to choose one or the other and explain why. So if you're at a major match, every time you're at a major match, unless it's tier 2, you're going to see a standard stage. Would you prefer to shoot at the first stage of the match or the last?
Ooh, the first. If you had said anywhere else in there other than last, I probably would have gone with that. But it's one of those things, like, even no matter how much you practice, the whole, it's a bunch of hardcover, or it's limited, or it's, weak hand, strong hand, all those things that we think we practice enough, we really don't. So, those are the kinds of things that can kind of make it or break your day or whatever. So I think on the first stage of the day, where you just, maybe you have a little jitters, or maybe you're just one of those people that doesn't bother them. Maybe your coffee hasn't kicked in yet. You can just kind of take it easy or not. But you can kind of go, all right, I'm just going to get one good one in the books and then get on with my rest of the day. Whereas I think if you save it for last and you're having a good match, you are way more prone to just messing that whole thing up and going home just shaking your head. That pretty much happened to me at the Pioneer Live for Your Die match last year. It was the second to last stage, not the very last stage, but that definitely took me from, I don't even know where it was, positionally or whatever. Like the practice score app, you can go in there and go, what if I done this differently? What if I shot less points? What if I shot this one faster? that one stage, I think, took me out of the top 10 and knocked me down pretty far. I messed that thing up pretty good.
You talked earlier about your an interesting experience with a moving target. There's two distinct skills here that are important in IDPA. Shooting moving targets or shooting on the move. If you had to choose one or the other, which would you prefer?
Well, I think one of the nice things about IDPA that's different than a lot of other sports is that kind of because of the more limited round count in the stage versus like USPSA or all those other sports that we all know about, the moving targets are one of the things that make it a lot more fun. Not that other sports don't do that, but you can kind of create a whole stage around this one tough array or one thing like that. So I love to say that, but I would definitely say I would rather shoot a whole match, on my feet the whole time, going as fast as I can around corners and all those things, and just hitting targets while moving, because it's especially with the way the points down work, you can really. You can shoot a completely different match like that than you do just standing still all the time. And so if it was one of those things where it was like, well, you got to pick one and you got to do it well, I would probably do on the move.
Gotcha. Now, I don't know how you guys do it in the Northeast, but which do you prefer, a mid-match lunch or a post-match meal?
Actually, do I have to pick one of those two? Because there's actually another way that we do it that I vastly prefer. If I had to pick one, I would say post-match, for the same reason why we do it differently up here. Mm-hmm. It's because that sit down, whatever, like you always, like you tend to sit down and rest for a second, and you just feel sluggish afterwards if you just stop moving. So I would much rather go after, but the way we tend to do it up here is we don't break for lunch. You peel off from your squad, you go over to the vendor or whatever that's there, some great food trucks up here, and you grab lunch, wherever you can kind of make it work. You bring some back for other people or something like that. Stopping for lunch, absolutely. I would never do that again if I can help it.
You've probably seen one of these stages where you come to a point of cover and you have a steel activator, like a popper that activates a disappearing target. And you have another paper target that you could engage if you're quick enough before the disappearing target is, presented and disappears. And some people will take that chance, and some people play it safe. I'm guessing I know what your answer is, but what's your thinking approaching one of those positions?
You got to gamble all the way. I definitely. It's a good skill to be able to have to do it and go, you know what? And really, in very slight circumstances, it might be like, oh man, that's a 20-yard, partial target or something like that, where it just doesn't make sense. But if you can take a steel activator and watch it, watch next time somebody is shooting in front of you, or you take some video. You got to video yourself shooting. Not all the time necessarily. I do all the time, but you have to video yourself shooting and use it as like a reference afterwards to kind of watch and check what's going on. It's one of the best ways to get better, because if you just go off your memory, it gets a little fuzzy and a little time dilation with the buzzer and all that stuff. So watch how long it takes when that steel actually falls versus when the target appears. Most of the time, you have plenty of time to get a lot of work done. Not reloading, but you have plenty of time to get a lot of work done on the stage before your mover actually, appears. So definitely, it's all time plus penalty. Go with the shortest time. If you can get in there and because down 10 on that target, or down 15 if it's 3 shots or whatever, is not good for you either. But if you have some experience with how it kind of goes, take a look at the activator, and see, is it directly strung to it, or is it going to fall on it? Because that can take a little more time. Pay careful attention when the in the group walkthrough, and just see, when that steel goes thud on the ground, how long do you really have? If it's 1.5, 2.5, 3 seconds or something like that is a ton of time to just sit there and just wait.
At this point in your shooting career, what would you say is your strongest skill? What part of your game is the strongest, and what part of your game do you think needs the most improvement?
That's a great question. So I would say I can absolutely rip on the trigger, good strong grip. I've gotten a lot of comments just from people over the years, just being friendly, people that I don't know, even the people that I shoot with, are like, holy cow, I absolutely can rip off rounds very, very quickly. And when I need to use it, I do. But actually pulling back from that has been one of the greatest things that has been good for me, is being able to have that kind of, and, people that shoot with me or that ask me about things, I always say it's a tool in the toolbox, and you have to have a toolbox full of tools to get the job done. So that just hammering on the trigger thing is super important. And as far as the thing that I probably need to work on the most, I could do a little better, with the red dot. I am struggling with weak hand shooting because in, classically shooting everything else, I would still use my right eye and just pull the gun over to my right eye with my, I'm right-handed, would pull the right eye dominant. I would pull the gun over to my right eye and just use the sights just how I would normally do it. And it didn't really affect me any, but with the red dot, at least with, the one I have, maybe people have different experiences, but I can't do that. I can get one shot off and then I can't find the dot again in there. Even with a good strong grip, it doesn't stay in the same place in recoil where you can track it. So I've had to close my right eye and then find it with my left, and I can do that if I think about it, but it's not automatic for me, so it kind of stumbles me a little bit. But pulling the trigger and stuff with my weak hand, no problem, but I can definitely that is one thing. And then the other thing I think too is steel. Sometimes I'll just no problem. It's not as big of a problem in IDPA, but in general, shooting with some other things, I'll have stages where I can take down a plate rack or Texas Star or something like that. Like I was born to do it. And then other times where I'm just, especially in New York where we only have 10 round magazines, where I'm just going, oh man, I just slide lock reloaded on this thing of steel, or, and I do have the problem in IDP occasionally, with some poppers or things where it's just like, oh, just missed this one shot. I just don't understand. And it's something with me, my brain, my trigger finger, and steel, where I need to pull out a bunch of it and just get a lot of practice in.
All right. As we wrap things up here, final question. What is it about IDPA that keeps you doing it for it's been nearly 7 years now, working to become a master in 3 different divisions and now trying to master another? Why are you, and involving yourself with the Battle of Saratoga as a match director, what is it about this sport that you love so much that keeps you doing it?
Really, I've met a lot of great people. I work really great together. We all work great together, made some really good friends. And it's something that I enjoy doing very much with my father. I'm an adult, so it's not like we see each other every day. Right. So, those kinds of things are great. But specifically about the sport itself, it's just, it is a challenge. It is a practical use of, handgun shooting. I feel like if I take a little time off and come back to it, I do feel a little rusty, so as like a concealed carrier and, very, pro Second Amendment and all of these things as you should be. But, being able to have a place to kind of hone, those skills and have, these kinds of challenges is, second to none as far as, go out and get training and all of those things or practice on your own, but being able to have, a practical test of your skills and saying, you're on the timer, you get to evaluate yourself against other people, nobody's shooting back at you. So go and, give it your all and be able to test and tinker and see what works, absolutely is one of the great things about shooting sports. And especially, with IDPA, there's, I think a great stage designer puts out stages that, makes you have to think and decide and go, like you said, do you want to shoot a moving target? You want to shoot on the move? Like, a good stage puts all of those kinds of things out there and you have to figure it out and you have to know what your skills are and know what your weaknesses are and play to either one of those. And I think IDP is a great place for that. All
right. Well, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. I really do appreciate it. Good luck with the Battle of Saratoga. And I hope I get a chance to see you at a match in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for having me so much. And, hopefully as time goes on, I'll be making my way, further out of the Northeast to some other matches. So yeah, that would be fantastic to run into you.
All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.